Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Royals Rundown podcast presented by Royals Review. I am Jake Milham, joined by Jeremy Greco as usual. And Jeremy, you're going to introduce our special guest this evening, sir.
Yeah,
how you doing, Jeremy?
I'm doing. I was like, apparently it doesn't matter how I'm doing today because I have guests.
It doesn't. It doesn't actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was good, and then you were like, you don't matter anymore, and now I don't feel good anymore. Anyway, forget the personal drama for a second. We have with us today our special guest, Shaun Newkirk, former Royals Review writer. You do have a Substack, right, Shaun, that you write on every once in a while?
Yeah, it's good to be here. It does exist. It's free, and I can never charge people because I write maybe once or twice a year. So it's totally, but it's very long form. It's relatively long form. I think those Royals reviewers, readers who are familiar with my writing, it's that, but it's a little bit longer. So that's why it's so few and far between. But it's just totally fast and practical. But yes,
okay. All right. Well, listen, Shaun. So I think people get it confused. What we do here is long form talking. Okay, long form writing. Something very, very different, and it's actually a little bit more coherent than what we do here. So if folks want to find some good long form writing, it pops up every now and then on RoyalsReview.com, the place where you need to go to visit for everything you need regarding your Royals fandom, news, analysis, and much, much more. Coming up later on in the show, we will be wrapping up the first half of the season, which is like mathematically not really the first half, but it's the first half of the calendar MLB season, if you will. But first, we do have to talk about the elephant in the room, the new arm in the bullpen. Hunter Harvey is joining the Kansas City Royals. The news broke late Saturday evening that the Royals had acquired right-handed reliever Hunter Harvey from the Washington Nationals in exchange for a sizable return, if you ask some folks. Minor league third baseman Caden Wallace and the 39th overall pick in this evening's draft. Shaun, since you are our guest, I do want to get your thoughts first. What was your gut reaction when you saw this news break?
Yeah, it's dangerous just to live by gut reactions, but I thought it was a little heavy in part. It's really kind of maybe even three prongs here. I think that the Royals would have been best off, and I've been tweeting this since May, basically, that I think their best bet is to kind of stand pat, not really do much overall. If there's a DFA claim that comes through, great, pick up that waiver claim, but not give up, not really kind of go all in, and not that they went all in with this at all. But hopefully, in my opinion, hopefully so can proceed a bunch more moves and kind of a pedal to the metal. If this is all they do, okay, fine. That's totally acceptable. They knew they needed bullpen help. Hunter Harvey is a decent reliever. He's not going to turn them into the 2015-14 Royals bullpen, but it's enough to at least make them a little less worse, even if there's still some issues in the bullpen overall. The player for Wallace, yeah, it was fine. I think there was some good evidence. It might have been Alex Duvall that mentioned this, that he's pretty blocked, as is already, as a third baseman. Not a particularly great prospect overall. I think it was like a 40 future value if you go by Fangraphs. So it's not as if they moved heaven and earth for him. So, okay, that's fine. The pick is the one that got me a little. That's the part I didn't like, I would say. I think it was the 39th overall pick.
Yes.
That's what got me a little bit, just because I would love to see the farm system right now, and thankfully I think Fangraphs rankings just came out this week, maybe last week, but just recently. It's not great, or at least it's not what it once was. And, it's never going to get back to 2011 levels, almost not likely, but possible to be better than they are. So I didn't love giving up a pick when the farm needs something. Having said that, I was tweeting this out as well, that the draft is supposedly, or at least reportedly, to be a little thinner than normal. Yeah. And so the 39th pick historically this year might 39th pick this year might kind of be of a lesser prospect historically than a deeper draft might be. So you can kind of pitch it into that one and say, so that's kind of the overall take. Would love them just done nothing, but if this is all they do, okay, whatever, you can live with it.
Okay. Jeremy, what do you think, man?
So it's very interesting. I feel like a lot of the reactions on Twitter were very negative, and a lot of that came from the fact that Harvey has an ERA over 4. I think it's actually slightly worse than Nick Anderson's, who was the guy who was DFA'd to get Harvey onto the 26-man roster, well, the 40-man and the 26-man roster. And the fact that Caden Wallace was I think MLB Pipeline ranked him as the number 2 prospect in the Royals system.
Mm-hmm.
But as Shaun kind of mentioned, I don't think he belonged as the number 2 overall prospect. We've talked about this before when we were talking about trades a few weeks ago. I don't believe in Caden Wallace as a prospect. I don't think he's ever going to be anything special. And so I don't care if they lose him. If you can't find someone who's as good as Caden Wallace, that is a problem with your scouting, not with the player.
Yeah.
And then as Shaun kind of said, that draft pick is probably the worst part of it. But also, I don't know. After the first round, I feel like drafting is such a crapshoot that I don't super care about that either. And then hearing that this is kind of a thinner draft than normal, which is also what I think Greg kind of mentioned last week, is that there's kind of a top 10, and then everybody else. So and they still have a pick at 41. So the money goes down, but if you don't need all the money because the prospects aren't that great anyway, then that's fine.
Yeah.
So I think, and also baseball trade values, for whatever it's worth, thinks that it's a pretty even trade. I know baseball trade values, it's kind of a joke, but it thinks it's a pretty even trade. What's that?
I'm not gonna. I was shaking my head, but I'm not gonna slander anybody. So I take back my head shake.
We slander all the time.
It's kind of a joke, but also I think it gives you kind of sort of a baseline sometimes, and so I think that it was probably okay. And the other thing is to remember that Hunter Harvey is not just for this year. He is also going to be here next year. So they traded for a year and a half of a reliever. If Hunter Harvey was only coming for this year, then Caden Wallace probably gets that done. But for a year and a half of Hunter Harvey, I think they had to kick in that draft pick to finish things off. And actually this is I feel like a really great move for the Royals to have a guy that if things fall apart next year, which some people think will happen. Obviously, I wrote over the weekend that I don't think that makes any sense, but some people think that'll happen. And if things do fall apart, well, now you can still trade Hunter Harvey away and get some of that value back.
Very true. Very true. So here's where I'm sitting at it. So first off, Caden Wallace, like even in regards to the weak Royals system, was far from a consensus top prospect. He was 2 in MLB Pipeline, number 5 in Baseball America, and then Fangraphs had him all the way down at number 7. I think Preston Farr had him outside of the top 10 altogether, and he has a closer thumb to the pulse of this Royals farm system than any of those outlets. So I do trust his input there as well.
Preston Ham has what? I'm sorry. What did Preston Ham has?
I know Preston had him outside the top 10. I don't know if he had him in the teens.
Okay.
I want to say it was like in the 12 range, maybe.
No worries.
So here's where I'm sitting regarding Caden Wallace specifically. Number one, the guy's been out since late May with an oblique injury. That's even long for an oblique injury, if you ask me.
Hey, Jacob, is that long for an oblique injury?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Thank you for asking. I appreciate it. Smart ass. And Jeremy, you and I have talked about this on the podcast before, that the changing of the guard in the front office, mainly when it comes to scouting and drafting that we've seen over the past couple of years, well, Caden Wallace was a product of the previous regime, if you will. I get it. There hasn't been like a clean slate or nothing in the front office, but there has been a sizable change in processes and thoughts. And Caden Wallace came from the previous folks, so maybe this is an opportunity for them to shape their farm system a little bit more. And honestly, even the best case scenario that many of these outlets had for Caden Wallace was that he was going to be like a Nick Lofton type guy, that he was going to be a utility. Yeah, I know. Oh boy, if that's your ceiling, then we have some issues. But that does speak to how shallow this Royals farm system is. Overall, I don't think the Royals missed out on much sending him away. And we all agree that the 39th pick does hurt a little bit. If you go back and look over the past 10 years or so, it's like a 9 in 10 chance that the person picked 39th doesn't pan out, like at all. Like they have a negative WAR or they don't make it to the show at all. I think Lance Lynn and Joey Gallo were the only notable 39th overall picks in the past 10 years that have made waves at the major league level. So I think it hurts more losing out on that, on the bonus, on having that big old draft pool. But they still have 41, so...
And they still have that 8th largest draft pool.
Yeah, exactly.
I do want to throw out there was one part of this whole equation that I forgot, which is that Hunter Harvey is probably the best reliever in the bullpen now. I mentioned, his ERA was a little high and that people were kind of down on him because of that, but he strikes out a lot of guys and he doesn't walk many. David Lesky wrote up a review of the trade for his newsletter, and it included the fact that he throws a fastball splitter, which is also not a combo that the bullpen currently has. So having a different look in the bullpen is something that's nice, and he gets a lot of swing and miss on both of those pitches. Also, of note to me that Lesky pointed out is he throws a curveball, he throws a slider, doesn't throw either of them much, but adding a slider or improving a slider is something that the Royals pitching coaches have done a lot over the past year. Cole Reagans, James MacArthur, Michael Wacha. So I could absolutely see them adding a slider to Hunter Harvey, and suddenly he's an even better pitcher than he has been.
What do you think about that, Shaun?
Yeah, I mean, the Royals bullpen is 27th. Let's say this. It is 28th in strikeouts per 9, or whatever you want to convert. The percentage is probably pretty close, but in per 9, yeah. So, I mean, like, they were missing somebody who could strike somebody out, and I think Hunter Harvey's at like a 10 per 9 strikeout, which, let me pull it up. It is 26% strikeout rate. We should be using rate for relievers, not per 9. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a guy who could strike someone out, not crazy walk rates. And I think Jeremy mentioned the ERA. Again, it's 2024. We're not using ERA for relievers anymore. We're using FIP. And so his fielding independent pitching, his FIP is 3.16. And it was 3.29 last year, 2.07 2 years ago. So his time in Washington has been a success. He's been worth, let's just call it 3 wins, which is pretty good for a reliever over a 3-year span. So, yeah, I mean, he's a good addition to the bullpen, absolutely. It's the matter of the cost. The other thing, too, is he's not a big home run guy and never really has been necessarily, at least in Washington. And, he's coming to a pretty dang good home run suppressing mark. So, yeah, I mean, it's a good pickup for a bullpen that needs help. But the argument is the cost. And real quick, I want to chime in. Jacob, when we're talking 39 picks, Barry Bonds was the 39th pick, but it was Barry Bonds when he came out of high school. So he didn't sign. But he was pick 39th technically. Okay. But he didn't sign at a Junipero Serra High School in San Mateo.
So breaking news, the Royals are missing out on Barry Bonds.
Yeah, he just won't sign. But they could technically draft Barry Bonds, but he's not going to sign.
I love it. Yeah, I'm glad that I don't know. We all, it sounds like we all have a positive outlook on what Harvey brings to this bullpen, especially with that high strikeout rate. Like that's just what you really, really want. And yeah, Jeremy, to your point, Nick Anderson did technically have a better ERA.
By like 0.05 or something ridiculous.
It was very, very small, but technically.
Oh, was somebody making that point? Like really, somebody was hammering?
Well, no, because it was just like. It was, kind of a general response to people complaining about Harvey's ERA is like, okay, let's not necessarily look at ERA here, y'all. As to your point, ERA for relievers can be very misleading.
It can. Had a FIP of 5.07. So Anderson did. So
which checks out because if you strike guys out, then your FIP goes down, and if you're walking guys and giving up home runs, then your FIP goes up, and that was Nick Anderson's thing.
I also did like that they chose to move on from Nick Anderson off the 40-man roster because I wholeheartedly believe that if they got something for Colin Selby, they can get something back for Nick Anderson moving because he does have years remaining on arbitration. All in all, he was still a serviceable reliever, I think, especially on a losing team or if a team is just really needing that right-handed relief help, then Nick Anderson can go and do that. And I
completely forgot about the existence of Colin Selby until you just mentioned it. There's going to be like 3 relievers or 4 relievers in the 2019 to 2024 span that I'm just going to be like, oh yeah, I forgot that guy completely existed. And Colin Selby is absolutely one of them. It's like with Donnie Joseph. If everybody remembers Donnie Joseph, the reliever, it's like, oh wait a second, that guy existed for the Royals. It's like, oh yeah, Donnie Joseph, sure.
What a deep cut there, Shaun.
I mean, that was like my time. My coverage time was then. So yeah, I know guy did back then, but like Matt Sauer Like I said, I barely remember Matt Sauer.
I think Matt Sauer is going to be like that trivia question and answer like 6 years down the line.
For your immaculate grid answer. Yeah.
Yes, precisely.
I did think it was weird that they cut Anderson at first just because he has options. So if you're like, okay, well, we don't want him pitching for the big leagues, we could demote him to AAA. But I haven't ever gotten around to looking at the 40-man roster to see who might have made more sense. I know some people were saying Carlos Hernandez, but he's still got that big fastball, so it's hard to move on from him.
Anderson's 33. He's 33 years old and he stinks.
Yeah.
Why are we playing 40-man games with a guy who's clearly has no future in the organization? So no, I mean, Jeremy.
And then I also kind of came around because I realized, he's DFA'd. He's not gone. The Royals can and will trade him, probably for cash, but cash is cash.
Yeah.
Pay the
they
next
could all
guy.
use some cash.
One of the things John Sherman mentioned when he was talking about wanting to add at the deadline was he wanted to do it by adding payroll, not by giving away prospects. So, whatever cash you can get for Nick Anderson helps you pay for whatever other acquisitions they might make, hopefully.
Absolutely. And Jeremy, just before we wrap this up, I do want to. So I was thinking the same thing about Anderson. I was like, hey, why don't they just demote him if they don't want him on the 26-man roster? I was chatting with the guys over at Royals Weekly, and I guess something in his service time triggered, but he didn't have any options. He had an option, I remember, when the season started, but he didn't have any other options remaining, which, I was like, oh, I didn't even realize this.
All right, that
strange.
makes even more sense then, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Sean, do you have any other thoughts on the Hunter Harvey trade before we move on?
No, I got to go dig up my old Hunter Harvey tweets because he was definitely a prospect that I liked. I'm looking around. I'm going to Google it, right? I'm going to Twitter search myself right now because he definitely was a prospect I remember liking when Baltimore originally got him out of high school, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
But no, nothing really other than it's an interesting kind of player. It's not like it's a good pick, but it's not as if it's like, okay, here we go. I said Hunter Harvey will be the best prep pitcher in the 2013 draft. And if John Gray doesn't reach the ceiling, I'll take Harvey as the best. So, I'm way out ahead of everybody on this. This is 2014. I had him as the best prep pitcher. I might not be wrong because I would have to go back and think of the 2013 prep pitchers of that class. But I love Hunter Harvey out of the draft. Let me just circle back on that.
That's a big endorsement to me.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They all stink. So, I wasn't wrong. It's Phil Bickford and Trey Ball and Cole Stewart, who was not. None of these guys ended up being good. Braden Shipley, I guess he was in college. So, yeah, no, I'm calling this a win because some of these guys aren't even in the league anymore. So
it just goes to show how much of a crapshoot the MLB draft is at the end of the day. And by the time y'all are listening to this, hopefully we'll know who the Royals picked in rounds 1 and 2. I'm very excited to see who they go with. Because just like Greg was talking about, the consensus is this is a pretty shallow draft class, if not one of the worst in recent years. Whoever, kind of falls out of that top 5, maybe the Chicago White Sox try to play some slot games like the Royals usually do. If they're really just taking that Royals mindset up to the south side, hopefully they do that and they mess up on it. So we'll see what happens there. I'm very, very excited. Sean, do you have any? Oh, sorry, Jeremy. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say maybe the White Sox will trade a real prospect for Nick Anderson.
Yes. Do they have those?
I don't know.
That'd be very, very fun. Sean, do you have any thoughts on the draft?
No, I've been so out of the draft game. Okay. Yeah. Yes, I have. I always have thoughts of everything.
Of course.
I don't have any pre-written stuff necessarily. I'm all kind of freestyle, but
just off the cuff.
Yeah,
what are you thinking?
It's definitely messed up how. When it would have been great in 2014, 2013, 2015, 2016, and even all up to really 2018. The draft lottery, I would have loved it. Now that the Royals are bad, I dislike the draft lottery because it's taken them way out of the picks. I think they've gotten pretty screwed. I think 2 years in a row. And of course, the Guardians finished 8th or something, 9th last year, and now they're going to have the first pick. So I like the idea of the draft lottery, but I don't like the results of the draft lottery. But having said that, I've seen some of the mock drafts. It seems like it's not necessarily all over the place, but there's a nice little top 4, 5, and then it's like, okay, 6, 7 from there is a little kind of in flux, or there's no kind of consensus. there's a nice consensus top kind of few, and then it's like we'll go from there. The beauty of the MLB draft is, obviously we've got all the slot games and all the kind of manipulation. It's not quite as NFL-ish where it's, a guy doesn't necessarily fall too far unless it's just an eval issue. With the MLB, obviously you can play games, you can trade kind of picks at the back end on the comp picks. And so, I mean, I think, I forget who the consensus is. Is it Braden Montgomery? I'm trying to think of who the kind of consensus Royals pick is. I know Bryce Rayner, shortstop, got a lot of kind of juice into that. I think I've seen some Braden Montgomery, the outfielder, and then, who's the pitcher?
Hagen Smith.
I keep hearing Hagen Smith and Rayner.
Yeah, Hagen Smith. So, I mean, sure. It'd be great if they ended up somehow with Weatherholt or Rosanna or Condon. Those are the three that I really kind of like, and I've always got such a crush on second basemen that can hit well, that have a good hit tool like Rosanna has. But of course, I like Rob Ref Snyder. So what the heck do I know? And so I think that it'd be nice if one of those top four fall to them, or even the top five. Some of those 50, 55 future value kind of players. But we'll see. It's always crazy. The one guy that I'm going to come out preemptively against, though, is going to be Caglianone, the Florida left-handed pitcher / hitter.
First baseman. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's the kind of thing. It's like it's a first base. I love college first basemen. I would have taken Vaughn, Torkelson first. Pavin Smith I wasn't that high on, but I have no problem necessarily taking it. But kind of, it does feel like a bit of a risk. He's first base only. He could pitch potentially, but he's got no command as a pitcher.
Yeah.
It's a lot of power. He struck out a lot. It's just kind of an interesting thing. So it's definitely high risk, high reward. But I think I would take any of the top five, and then if any of them are available, so sorry, that's my off the cuff takes.
Jeremy, what you got, man? Do you have any thoughts on the draft before the results are in?
Last week I was very anti Hagen Smith. I've been reading some more stuff about him since then. If they pick him, I'll be okay with that. That'll be fine. I almost like him better than Chase Burns now, who was Greg's guy that he really liked. Yeah. But still, my fingers are still kind of crossed that J.J. Weatherholt falls for some insane reason. The Royals grabbed him. I think that would be like the perfect scenario.
I mean, the hamstring is a real issue with Weatherholt. I mean, I don't know if you saw Keith Law's mock draft. He fell to 7th, Weatherholt did, to the Cardinals. So, I mean, he could absolutely technically fall. And, in fact, he's been predicted by one analyst to fall. So, it wouldn't be crazy. And he would be great at 6th overall.
Yeah, it'll be very. I'm just gonna be glad to have this kind of shuffle out of the way. I never realized how easy it was having like a set top 5 consensusly in any draft class, because this year has just been absolute chaos. And I think once you get outside of that top 5, it's going to be absolute chaos this evening. So make sure you go check out RoyalsReview.com to see who the Royals ended up with, and why that matters, and why J.J. Piccolo won the MLB draft. All right, guys. So the Royals played their final game this afternoon ahead of the All-Star break, dropping the series finale to the Boston Red Sox by 1 run. It looked like it was going to be much uglier of a game than it was. Brady Singer had a fairly rough outing, but the bullpen kept the Royals in the game. The bats came alive a little bit, and ultimately the Royals were 1 or 2 errors away from making a comeback in this game. Errors not as in the scoreboard errors, but we all know what we're talking about if you were watching that game. But I asked you guys before we started the show if we could set this afternoon's game aside and just look at the first half of this season and talk about how we're feeling, where the Royals are at, and maybe what we can expect from them in the second half. Jeremy, do you mind starting us off?
Yeah, so just to set the stage a little bit, the Royals finished the first half 52-45, 7 games over 500. That is the most wins by a team heading into the All-Star break after losing 100 or more the previous season. So I think that the place we have to start from when discussing this team is what an amazing turnaround. Just flat out outstanding. If they don't go to the postseason, that's not an epic failure. That's a wow. They almost made it as a team that lost 100 games the year before. And then their big signing was a 2-year deal with a player option to Seth Lugo, who no one believed in until he suddenly became a Cy Young contender. it was not that people didn't believe in him, but no one was looking. If anyone was looking at Seth Lugo and thinking he was a Cy Young contender for 2024, he would not have been available for the price that the Royals paid for him. So some really outstanding signings. The Lugo deal looks fantastic. The Waka deal looks pretty good. The Renfroe deal looks better every day. And the Stratton deal looks bad. The Smith deal looks like it didn't really happen. And so that's kind of the free agency, I guess. Garrett Hampson is, I think I've come fully around. He's a complete disaster, and I'm ready to see him gone. And yeah, so this is a team that I think we see some real strengths with. Bobby Witt Jr. has continued. He turned into a superstar last year. He did not slide back at all this year, I don't think. He's been caught stealing a little bit, but that was happening last year. I think that's still something that can be fixed. It just hasn't yet for some reason. And he hasn't hit as many home runs as some people expected, but he's still hit his fair share, and he's hit lots of doubles and triples to make up for that. He's got more hits than anybody in baseball, one of the league leaders in batting average, just one of the best players in the game. And the Royals signed him to that extension over the offseason, which looks like a really good extension with every at-bat he takes, pretty much. This is a good team. It's got an excellent starting rotation. It's got 2 or 3 hitters that can hit pretty consistently, and then it's got a bunch of guys who can hit sometimes. And to me, I know that sounds like condemnation a little bit, but this was a team that last year had one guy who could hit. One guy, Bobby Witt Jr., and a bunch of guys who didn't hit, and then a couple of guys who sometimes hit. They've got a backup catcher in Freddie Fermin who would be starting for at least 20 other teams in MLB. And I still believe in Michael Garcia. Michael Massey, I think, is pretty good. I'm pretty happy with where he's been. Not Nick Lofton. Kyle Isbell, I always get them confused in my head for some reason. Kyle Isbell looks pretty good for who he is. Like, these are not superstars, but these are guys that can be starters on playoff teams. Vinny Pasquantino, I think he's got more juice in him than we've seen necessarily, but even what we've seen, I think, is sufficient. So I look at those 3 guys and I say, these are 3 guys that you're not like, yeah, I gotta get them and then I'm gonna be good. Those are 3 guys that you say, all right, those positions are filled. We're happy with that right now. They're slightly above average production. Let's focus on filling some other holes. And that's where the rest of the lineup has struggled, I think. And again, that excellent rotation has really carried them. Unfortunately, just a couple really bad starts the last couple of days where the Singer and Lugo left pitches up, and the Red Sox punished them. And so we're gonna go into the All-Star break feeling kind of bad about the starting rotation, but we shouldn't. They made a huge improvement to the bullpen by swapping out Nick Anderson for Hunter Harvey. I don't think they're done dealing. I think we're going to see at least one more bat and probably one more reliever. Hopefully, as Shaun was saying, and as I've kind of intimated, hopefully mostly by saying, hey, you don't want to pay that guy, right? We'll take him off your hands and we'll pay him and you can have a lottery ticket. And hopefully that's how that goes. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I think that overall, this is a team we should feel good about, even as they lost the series in Boston.
All right, Jeremy, thank you for that. Shaun, so after Jeremy had his input, is there anything you'd like to add or you'd like to disagree with? I'm not saying disagree with, but anything you want to extrapolate upon, I guess.
Jeremy's got this long history of just being wrong about everything. So I would say, okay, so I was typing the notepad. I wanted to be sure because I'm really bad about losing my thoughts. Jeremy, so you mentioned Witt Jr. stealing. I think that it's going to be like, it's the Josh Allen comparison, where Josh Allen, the football player, the quarterback for the Bills, where it's like, yeah, do you want to take away? Witt's a very aggressive base runner. So with all the highs that comes with some of the lows. It's not even that low of lows. Allen's got all the fumbles and kind of interceptions. Witt's not quite that lows of that, but he's such an aggressive base runner. He still has positive base running value. I think just the other day I was looking, he's second or third in base running runs above average at StatCast, even despite being thrown out. And he's top 5 or so in, I forget what metric they called it, but basically aggressive success percentage. So how often he takes an extra base, the opportunities divided by the success rate or other way around. And so he's still very valuable on the base pass despite being thrown out. It seems like in high leverage situations. So I think that's part of it is he's going to be thrown out a bit, but just because of the matter of his aggression. But you don't want to take away the aggression because then you kind of
no, absolutely not.
All right, now I'm going down the list here. Oh gosh, they got to get. I'm just going to free range thoughts here. They got to get Michael Garcia out of the leadoff spot.
Yes.
I've been harping this so much. They've been putting Frazier in the leadoff spot.
Yeah, Frazier led off all weekend.
Yeah, which has been better. But they just, it's one thing that does Garcia have a spot on the team? Yes. On a team that is a continuing team, yes. But he's batting 8th or 9th. It's going to be the LCD Escobar one where, yes, I know it's kind of ironic to say that, but Escobar did bat leadoff. We know that, but he should never have been. Yeah, it was a fun thing. It worked out in the end, right? But it just was not, really should not have happened. And that's what kind of Garcia is going to be. He should be batting 8th. He batted 8th today.
He was out of the lineup today.
Oh, but he came in.
He pinch hit for Frazier, so he was in the leadoff spot, but he was benched.
Yeah. But he's been batting lower in the order recently, which is good, which is where he needs to be. He's got like a 73 or 70 WRC plus, so it's got to be a guy that, his defense is good enough. He made that great play today. But yeah, absolutely, he's worth having in the lineup on a contender. Kind of pivoting from that. Yeah, you mentioned, Jeremy, like these players, a lot of these players are starters on a playoff team, which I think is correct. We mentioned Garcia as such. Renfroe, could be, I'm thinking down the list, Isbell definitely could be a starter type for me. Whatever he's been an above average hitter. I think the thing is, though, is you don't want 70% of your lineup made of these guys that could start on teams.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's my big issue overall with the roster as is. It's like it's definitely a fun story. And you bank the wins you've already won, right? Those can never be revoked. In theory, I guess they could get caught cheating or something, but in theory right now, they cannot be revoked. And so, like, they've done great, which is kind of my overall theme of they've exceeded expectations, absolutely. It is a little top-heavy, and it kind of feels like it's just like Reagans, Lugo, Witt, and Perez. Like, if those guys aren't on, and thankfully they're pretty much on most nights. Perez is, I think, kind of fallen back just a little bit recently.
Well, he did, and then he had a really good road trip.
That's true. Yeah, he did. Yeah. I was thinking, he was on pace for 5 wins, and now I think he's on pace for 2 or 3-ish. Or he's at 2 now, so.
He's currently on an 8-game hitting streak right now.
Yeah, exactly. He's really big, though. He's really defied the age. But that's the kind of thing that does feel like 1 or really 2 through 4 with Pasquantino, which I think he can have. He's still kind of undecided exactly what he is. Great. That's a nice, solid part of the lineup. But 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, it's kind of like living on a prayer with those guys at times, right? Where you think about the was it the Mariners, whoever they came back 9 runs down from.
Yep.
That was miraculous, right? It felt like it's just kind of sometimes it does feel like they just kind of miraculously have to relive the 2014, 2015 Royals, where it's just the kind of group in the blast, or just trying to kind of keep the line moving tight. So that's my one kind of main concern. Rotation, I have been way overwhelmed in a good sense. We knew Reagans was a nice reclamation project from the Rangers. Lugo, as you said, Jeremy, nobody expected him to be this good, and it's been great. So, do I kind of think that Lugo is going to continue to be a Cy Young candidate? Could be. It seems like it's almost like, man, just please don't fall off. Reagans absolutely looks apart. Lugo could be, but then, you've got Marsh, who can have a good start, and then there, Singer today. So, the team is at least a 500 plus or minus whatever you want to call it, 3 wins. So they can be 3 games above 500, 3 games below on a true talent level, I think. The benefit is they've already banked all those other wins. So even if they play 500-ish the rest of the way, they should, in theory, be very close to playoff spot, which I think anybody would have taken. Whatever.
At the end of the day, the Royals have not been under 500 since the opening week of the season. Ever since then, they have played above 500. And I'm sorry, that greatly exceeds my expectations. I was expecting, maybe an 85 loss here, maybe a 90 loss here in a bad scenario. You take some steps forward, but ultimately you're still sitting in, near last place in the AL Central, if not the AL overall. That is not where they're at right now. They're in the thick of the postseason hunt. They still have a good shot at a wild card berth. And thankfully, the Guardians are slowing down quite a bit. The Twins they're playing so-so right now. They're kind of holding the same flight pattern that the Royals are doing right now. They're playing at 500 or above 500 over the last 20 games or so. So I'm still overall very happy with the results from the Kansas City Royals. Some of the processes and how some of those wins have come about have been concerning. You can't be relying on coming back from 8 down against the Seattle Mariners. That's not how you can win baseball games across a 162 game season. And they haven't relied on that. I get that, but at the end of the day, this is not a perfect team, and that is okay. I think Royals fans need to take this All-Star break and admit this isn't the 2014 or the 2015 teams. This is not a super strong team, but at the end of the day, they are still above 500. They are still a good team. They are a much improved team, and I feel happy with that in my soul. I really do. Maybe that's me not being critical enough. If you go down to the RoyalsReview.com comments, it is absolutely a shitstorm right now on the game recap. The sky is not falling, okay? Matt Quatrero is still going to be your manager come Friday when the Royals play. Don't you worry, okay? And Vance Wilson is still going to be swimming on the ground to get the guy into third base, okay? That is still going to be the case. It's 162 games, for Christ's sake.
Thinking of the analogy of the 14-15 teams, I got blown away by two stats. The current Royals, I think, are not accounted for today. I'm looking at it. They have a 95 WRC plus, good for 21st, which 5% below league average. I was looking this up the other day. The 2015 Royals, what do you think their WRC plus was? Yeah, Jacob, what do you think?
I'm thinking 105, just slightly below that.
99.
99.
Couldn't believe it. I would have sworn that they were an above average hitting team. 99. At least last time I checked. I'm going to look right now. But yeah, they were 99. That was a 2015 team. The 2014 team, 92. I couldn't believe it. I could have sworn. So all that to say, just saying there with this is a below average hitting team, but so were the 14 team, so was the 15 team, which if you can believe it, but of course,
14 team famously was last in home runs in at least the American League, if not all of MLB.
Yeah. And I mean, that the biggest kicker is just obviously the bullpen. It's just nowhere completely close. And I think, but it's bounced a little bit by the starting pitching. I think I would say probably maybe talent wise. God, now I'm going to have to stretch my memory on the 14-15 starting pitching rotation. But I was just thinking
the 14 rotation was elite.
What'd you say?
The 14 rotation was really good. Jeremy Guthrie was still good that year. They had Irvin Santana and Jeremy James Shields had left. No, James Shields was still there in 14.
In 14,
but Santana had left. Yeah. Duffy pitched really well that year. Ventura pitched really well that year.
Yeah, I gotta look at these. So that rotation is starting pitching. So they're fifth minus, which I'm always gonna say fifth. I don't know, man. 104, and they were 4% below average FIP, but I think ERA is really where it lives because they were 92 ERA minus, right? So era adjusted ERA. So that defense, I think the defense may look a little better than they might have been, but I think that the pitching this year's team, Reagan just looks so good. Like he definitely feels like a pitcher the Royals haven't had since Greinke, like younger kind of Greinke. Who am I missing here? This guy, just kind of younger Greinke. In that sense, not that he's going to have, Greinke's Hall of Fame, but he definitely looks like a guy who has the stuff, the quality, kind of all of the characteristics and intangibles you might want out of a starting pitcher. A good kind of ace level, or at least high number 2, low number 1. I mean, I don't think he's going to be a Hall of Famer or kind of up there with like the Verlander or whatnot.
You're such a wet blanket.
Why? Because I didn't call him Justin Verlander.
Cole Reagans is a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, that's
put it down.
That's higher the number.
That's the ground to take. But so I have to say, and I think they mentioned the stat today on the broadcast that the Royals bullpen has pitched the fewest innings in the league this year because the starters have just been so good. And that's great. I mean, that saves your bullpen for the rest of the year. We talked about the Guardians of the exact opposite, where they pitched the most innings this year, and we're going to see how that ends up looking. So, it's definitely an interesting kind of lineup. But I definitely didn't want to not mention the WRC because I was blown away. I was just going to say somebody's got to also know this stat other than me because it's outrageous.
One thing I want to throw out there is kind of argue back a little bit. I can't think of the word I really want to use, so I'll say argue back because I sound really intelligent when I say that with you, Jacob. It's when you say that this team is not the 14 team. I've kind of made this argument before that the 14 team and the 13 team were basically the same team. The difference was in how many games the other teams won, because the 14 team only won three more games than the 13 team did. So I think this is a 13-14 team, and I think whether they make the playoffs is going to depend a lot more on what the rest of the league does. If the rest of the league falls off their 95 win paces or whatever, then the Royals have a real shot at it. I also think that if the Royals go on a real hot streak, which is what one of the big differences between 13 and 14 is how hot they got after the All-Star break. They got hot after the All-Star break in 13, but they got really hot in 14. And if they can do that again, that's also going to make a huge difference. And I got to tell you, I was looking at the upcoming schedule. So let's just maybe slide into our preview of the second half now. I was looking ahead at the schedule. They open with a lovely homestand against the White Sox, the Diamondbacks, and the Cubs. And then they go on the road to the White Sox and the Tigers, and they better take advantage of those White Sox games because there's a lot of times they get to play them this year. But those are the first 5 series out of the All-Star break. That's a really good opportunity to get hot. The best team in there is the Diamondbacks. They're not that good this year. So that's where I'm kind of looking right now is, man, if they can go in there and get hot and then stay hot as they go and play the Guardians and the Red Sox again after that, and those will be at home. So I like they've played so much better at home. So hosting the Guardians, hosting the Red Sox, hosting the Cardinals, who they just swept on the road. Those are some real opportunities to rack up, as Shaun was saying, rack up some of those wins that they don't take away from you. You still get those no matter how you play after that. And kind of give themselves a cushion. Like they had that cushion earlier and it kind of dissolved. They need to build up another cushion to get them through September.
Exactly. Hey, Shaun, I'm going to put you on the spot. So going back to July 14th, 2023, 1 year ago, 1 calendar year ago, can you guess how many wins the Royals had?
Oh gosh, like the sum total. So a calendar year. So let's say over 162 games. Let's just call it. Can I equate it in that terms?
Well, no. So through all of their games to this date.
Does
that make sense?
Back to last July.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say 89.
No. I mean, like, what was their record? How many wins did they have on this day 1 year ago?
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking through that time.
No, sorry. Okay, that's my bad.
So last year through July 14th. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna guess.
Okay, Jeremy, do you have a guess?
They finished with 56, 24.
Okay, well, Shaun was right on the nose. It was 26.
I was looking at the answer. So
I suck.
I had the page up already. I can't help it. I was right there with the page up already. I swear to you. I was looking at the schedule.
They were 26 and 65 at this point last year. Okay, I'm just happy they're above 500.
Can I just throw out there? Let me pull this up again to make sure I'm saying this right. Say that record again, Jacob.
26 and 65.
The White Sox are 27 and 71.
Yeah, they're a bad team, man. I mean, yeah.
My condolences. They are awful.
One thing I think, the one thing that kind of not scares, but the one thing that really gives me the pause is like they've done a good job. So I'm looking at who they played this year. Like, they're 6-1 against the White Sox. Oakland they went 4-2 against Toronto. Which actually Toronto's not bad, but they're 5-2. Like, it just feels like, man, they just didn't seem like the same quality as the Dodgers, who they went 1-2 against.
Yeah.
The Yankees 1-3, Baltimore 2-4. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, they definitely had their numbers debatable going at 6 games, but they're 4-2 against the Guardians. But then they are 2-5 against the Twins. So it's just kind of like, I don't know. It does feel like they're in that middle, that kind of fatty part of the team, of the standings, right, where they could probably do something against the Bostons, the Astros, kind of that level. The Blue Jays are kind of, that kind of middle tier. Like they're solidly in that kind of tier, which I think most of us would put them in maybe, oh gosh, the next tier down at the start of the year. Like coming into the year, we would have been like, oh
At
yeah,
least.
there's probably a team that's not maybe hopefully isn't going to be like White Sox level bad, but could definitely be one of those teams that you are fourth place or third place is the goal, is like the hey, let's hope and pray we get to third place, right? As opposed to third place should be the expectation at a minimum this year, and third place this year just happens to be, with now that they've got the expanded wild card, just happens to be maybe a playoff spot, just depending upon how the other divisions shake out.
Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at the Royals. They do have a favorable strength of schedule remaining after the All-Star break. I'm hoping that the Royals, that this break serves them well. We saw MJ Melendez leave the game early today with a left ankle sprain, so I'm sure having 5 or so days off will help with that. A lot of little bumps and bruises that are affecting this Royals 26-man roster right now. So hopefully this is a good time to heal. This is a good time to regroup. And like you said, Jeremy, they come out of the break in a very favorable position. I think they're 31-16 in Kauffman Stadium right now. Like, they are great at home. They're not just good; they are great at home. And I'm hoping that we see a dominant debut of Hunter Harvey in Kauffman Stadium, because he is elite away from the Nationals' home park.
31-18. I'm looking at the page right now. 31-18.
My bad,
listeners.
But I want to. I know some people probably out there are going, yeah, well, you said they were going to be good after the Dodgers series. They were going to play some weak teams. Those were the one difference here is that those were games on the road where the Royals have not been good this year. So I was hoping that they would, go to Oakland and Texas and be like, yeah, I know we're not good on the road, but you're Oakland and Texas. It didn't happen. They're going to play these games at home and then go on the road trip. And they've played well on the road against the Tigers and the White Sox this year. So that road trip is not as scary of a road trip as some of their other road trips. Also, I do want to throw out there, I know it's frustrating. I know I personally said they almost need to win 2 out of 3 from Boston, or else that tiebreaker is going to be really hard to get a hold of, and that could be really dangerous at the end of the year. Didn't happen, but they did have a 4-4 road trip, which, yes, would you like it to be better? Absolutely. Absolutely would have preferred a 5-3 road trip. But a 4-4 road trip is not the common kind of logic, common thought is that you win at home and you play even on the road. Is one of the things that I think people talk about a lot. So they played even on the road.
But that's not opponent adjusted, though, the road trip, because it was Colorado. I mean, they lost 2 out of 3 from Colorado. So the only reason they went 4-4 is because they swept the Cardinals, right?
Which are better than Colorado.
What'd you say?
Which are better than Colorado.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, it's saved by that, but I think the 4-4 record hides that they lost 2 out of 3 to the Rockies. And
it does.
I'm trying to remember those games. Were those 2 losses even close?
Yes, they almost won. Both they were in that was when Garrett Hampson tried to bunt a 3-0 pitch with a tying run on base.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. I was thinking the 10-1 blowout they won. Sorry, that was stuck in my mind. They won the blowout. Sorry. Yeah. But
they scored more runs in that 3-run series than they had scored against them.
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
So that was you could argue that was a weird series and they should have won.
Definitely a weird series. Yeah, I think that's definitely agreeable. But that's kind of the thing, is this team can have those weird series, right? They can get swept by the Rangers. Not a bad team per se, but not a particularly good team. The Oakland game, you know what I mean? The Oakland, they kind of have that miraculous win on that Thursday. I mean, I'm again just looking through. I don't know, man. They're just, because the lineup is a below average lineup and the bullpen is bad, or at least was bad. It might be better. They are going to be subject to those weird losses, or even weird wins too, right? Yeah. Because they've got a superstar level player, and they've got a guy playing above his head, not above his head, but playing very well with Perez, and they've got a good rotation. So yeah, I mean, this is a high variance team, I guess.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. Is like, nobody lose your minds. This is like you said, it's a high variance team, and that I see that's really true in the lineup, is because you're gonna, like you kind of mentioned, you're probably going to get hits from Bobby. You're probably going to get at least RBIs from Vinny. And you're probably going to get... You're probably going to get RBIs from Salvi. So
I
is
didn't say
anybody
Pat
else
Martino.
doing anything?
Yeah.
Anybody else doing anything? Okay, well, then you're going to score some runs. If nobody else is doing anything, which happens frequently, then you're in trouble. So when I look at this lineup, you were kind of going through earlier, and I'm like, okay, yeah, 2, 3, 4. Though, really, I think in an ideal world, I would move Salvi to 5 just because of the variance that he brings. He's not that consistent. And then I'm cool, honestly, with the current versions of Hunter Renfroe and Michael Massey, 6 and 7. And then Michael Garcia batting 8, I feel like is fine because he brings the glove and he's got a little pop if he can figure that out. So then really what you're talking about is your holes in your lineup, and this is where your problem is your holes in your lineup are in your 1 and your 4 spot, which are the 2 kind of most important spots in your lineup. So that's where why the Royals, I think, are struggling. And I think if they could even fill that 1 spot, that's why I've been arguing, I don't need a power bat outfielder. I need someone who can take walk and bat him leadoff. I don't want Adam Frazier leading off. I want a real leadoff guy if you're going to go out and add a bat for the deadline. And then the variance goes way down and this team looks much better much more often.
Let me just hit the pipe real quick and say Kyle Isbell for leadoff spot, guys.
I keep saying Hunter Renfroe for leadoff, but no one wants to listen to me.
Jeremy, you had a mysterious tweet about you had a leadoff hitter that you had like a hot take leadoff hitter.
Yeah, Hunter Renfroe.
It was Renfroe? Okay. Yeah. I thought you were going to say Fermin or something like that.
No, I mean, Fermin wouldn't be a terrible option.
He would. No.
The problem is that he's not playing every day.
Well, yeah, but you got to have some amount of speed, I think. Every good leadoff.
I agree with that.
I think Hunter Renfroe, he's not fast, but he's not slow.
Whoa, hold on. You're preaching to the choir here. I was the biggest Hunter Renfroe fan in college when he was there. He chased a deer down on foot when he was at Mississippi State.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you guys this. I love Hunter Renfroe. He's way underrated speed.
He's looked so much better over the last month. Like, he looked so bad for the first 2 months. I was like, you got to eat that contract. I don't know what you're going to do. But he's looked so good over the last 2 months. And I love the plate approach. He's not just getting hits. He's taking walks. He's seeing pitches. And that's why I don't know that I'm like, in an ideal world, he's your leadoff hitter. But for the current iteration of the Royals position players, I think he might be the best choice.
I think Witt Jr. I mean, in my opinion, I
refuse to. I'm not touching Bobby Witt Jr. Right where he is, he's playing so well. I'm not messing with that.
You don't want to jinx it. Yeah. I think he's probably lineup proof. Like I think he could bat a 9th and he'd be all right. I mean, you're probably right. But I'm old enough to remember when they tried to bat him leadoff and he tanked for a while. So I'm just like, that's the one thing that always works. I do not want to touch.
Hey, Shaun, I'm going to put you on the spot once again. So Royals are sending 4 guys down to Arlington for the All-Star game. Who do you think is the Royals MVP in the Midsummer Classic?
Of the 4 players, who does the best? I mean, it's Witt Jr. I know it's such an easy answer, but it's the safe bet. It's the might be a negative EV bet, but it's the he's probably minus 110 or whatever you want to put odds on it. So he's the favorite for sure. So, because Lugo, I don't think Lugo was really ever going to start, but he certainly isn't going to be the starter. He's not going to open for the AL team. At least I wouldn't assume he would be. Not that he necessarily blew it. I don't think he really was going to anyways, but, he'll probably pitch 1 inning. So that's tough. Witt Jr., again, he's not going to be the starter. It's going to be Gunnar Henderson, right? Yes. I think. And so it's just kind of, I think he could have a real impact because he's probably going to get 2 at-bats, whereas Lugo might pitch an inning. Reagans might not even pitch at all, to be clear. They're not even guaranteed to pitch. They probably will, but they're not guaranteed both. Of course, I think our minds are blown thinking that the Royals have 2 pitchers in the All-Star game.
For the first time ever.
I know.
First time ever they have 2 starting pitchers at the All-Star game. And Brady Singer had a case until today, being brought in as like an injury replacement.
You were so, it's such a luxury because I was thinking like, man, we're lucky to get, if Lugo pitches at all, but it's like, well, no, because the Reagan, I mean, it's now double the odds of that.
Yeah, at least one, I would be very surprised if at least one of them didn't pitch. And
they will.
I think there's a fair chance both of them pitch.
Yeah, could be. I think Reagan's would
Jeremy, do you have a pick who would be the MVP for the Royals? Reagan's?
Right. I think Reagan's can come in there and he can strike out. I mean, he's only going to pitch 1 inning. Yeah. But if he comes in and strikes out a couple of guys, and pitches a scoreless inning, Bobby Witt could have 2 at-bats and not get a hit in either one of them. And then Reagan's is going to, even as good as he is, because it's so hard to hit. It is so hard to hit. So I think that could be where, and I absolutely believe in Reagan's over Lugo. I love Lugo. I support Lugo. I believe Lugo is real. I think Reagan's is I think a little underrated, and even by me this year, because the ERA has been kind of high because he had those couple 7-run games, and then Lugo has been so good. But Reagan's is still Reagan's. He's still so good. So I believe in him.
Okay. Shaun, were you trying to say something?
Oh, I was going to say, Jimmy, to your point, we know that hitting in baseball is harder than pitching, and Witt is going to be going up against, I don't know, maybe not Paul Skeens, but he's been going up a disgusting pitcher, whereas, so he's going to have to stack decks against him, not because he's a hitter, but because he's going up against very, very good pitching, whereas I think Reagan's a very good pitcher who's got to have the advantage. So to your point, I could definitely see Reagan's coming in, maybe not striking out the side, but coming in, going 3 outs, 1 through 3, and getting a strikeout or 2.
Okay.
I don't know if that'll get him the thing is is that enough to win? Sorry, we're talking about the Royals.
Yes,
just the Royals.
Right. Yeah. But still, all my stuff.
I will give you the most likely player to walk away with All-Star MVP, Bobby Witt Jr. Because he's the one I think is most likely to hit a dinger, and that's what'll get you the All-Star MVP.
Yeah.
Well, fine. I'll just take Salvi then. Jeez, give me the plus 300 odds on Salvi, okay?
What about the home run derby? Do we have home run derby takes?
Bobby's gonna win, baby.
He would win a line drive hitting derby.
Oh yeah, it would be Bobby.
If they hit the bullseyes that you had to hit against the wall.
This is the argument I made last week. It's the argument I'm going to make now. Is that Bobby Witt Jr. doesn't have more home runs because he swings at every gosh darn thing he sees, and so he gets all these wonky hits on pitches that he shouldn't even be swinging at, but he turns it into a double. You give him meatballs down the middle 5, 6, 7 times, or hopefully every time he gets a pitch at the home run
every time.
it's gonna go over. It's gonna go over the fence more often than not. The one thing I can bring, the one number I can bring to this is he has by far the longest home run hit by any of the Derby contestants this year. His 463-footer is 25 feet longer than anybody else has hit this year.
Yeah, but I was thinking this year, true, but I was looking at this exact stat too. Pete Alonso, for the career, Pete Alonso has.
Yeah, but he's not playing Pete Alonso's career. He's playing Pete Alonso 2024.
Oh, I know. That's what I'm saying. I was looking at it too. It's like I was just curious, who's got the longest home runs of the Derby contestants? Pete Alonso was 1 through 8 of all the longest ones, but that's not what it counts for here. But I think
Polar bear.
I know this is off the point, but when Fangraph said a piece about this recently, when all of the swing speed and the backtracking data came out, Witt Jr.'s problem, and not that the problem, he's a great hitter, but the comparison was him against Gunnar Henderson. Why Gunnar Henderson is at 30 whatever home runs, and Witt Jr. is at 16, despite having similar, not sweet spot, sweet spot, and kind of similar bat speeds. The problem is that Witt Jr.'s, I'm going to try to summarize this. Witt Jr.'s best swings, I guess to say, or fastest swings, sweet spot swings, are typically at a lower launch angle. He's hitting his into the ground. Gunnar Henderson's the exact opposite. The launch angle increases, his sweet spot percentage increases, whereas Witt Jr. is the opposite. His sweet spot percentage starts out high, and as launch angle goes up, his sweet spot percentage starts going down. So that's kind of the thing. Is I think Witt Jr.'s issue, again, he's a great hitter, is that he does have kind of the suboptimal one. Now, can he fix that by having a higher launch angle? Probably not, because again, do you want to risk Witt start hitting more fly balls? Sure, but then he can beat out singles. He could turn singles into doubles. So that's something you don't want to risk. But I guess all that to say, there's a nice article at Fangraph that looks exactly over that, where it compares Gunnar versus Witt, and it says exactly. It's a nice graph they've got where it says it. So that's the problem with Witt's, who again is a fantastic hitter. He's got a 150 WRC plus. Yeah,
I started the year with our Royals review predictions, preseason predictions, as the most bullish on the Royals. I said they were going to go 81-81. They were going to finish third in the division. Bobby Witt Jr. was going to win MVP. Cole Reagans was going to win Cy Young. So I'm just going to keep that energy going and insist that Bobby Witt Jr. is going to win the home run derby.
You're sick in the head. Has anybody ever told you that? How just
so many times, Sean. So many times.
I did ask our listeners how Bobby will fare in the home run derby. 28.6% said he is going to finish first, and then 71.4% said if you ain't first, you're last. That's just how it goes in the home run derby, I guess. All right, y'all. Let's anything else we want to talk about? Any burning answers we got to get out of our minds? Shaun, I know you have a big old empty room up there that you have got some thoughts bouncing around in.
I definitely wanted. I'm glad I got my hit in on Michael Garcia no longer being. I almost called him Michael Franco. That's how burned I am by Royals third baseman's name, Michael. And I thank God I didn't call him Chester Cuthbert. So yeah, that's my one thing. I really said they got to stop beating him off. But yeah, it should be a fun second half. I mean, it's definitely nice to be in July and August and September and actually have some stuff to watch for. They could certainly sneak in. God bless that third wild card spot now. Oh man, I wonder. Did anybody look and see if the 2013 team would have made the wild card with the expanded slot? I don't even know that team.
I don't know,
I didn't look, but I think they would have.
You think? I'm looking in the AL standings.
They were really close because they were still in it in the last week.
No, the Rangers. Guardians were 92, Rays were 92, Rangers were 91, the Royals were 86. Wait, 13. Yeah, 13. Yeah, so they were very close though. But yeah, because the third spot would have went to the Rangers that year. Apparently, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 AL teams won 91. So that was just a bad year to win.
Yeah, just to that point is 91 wins would have been what you needed for the third wild card spot that year. That's how crazy that year was. In 2014, the third wild card spot would have required looks like 87 wins. Which is a drastic difference.
But what is it going to take this year? It's going to take, I think, 90-something wins.
I think it's going to take about 91 wins.
And that's why I'm saying if the Royals miss the playoffs, it's not because they're not as good as the 14 team. It's because their opponents are the 13 opponents who just won all of the games.
I see.
Yeah. And to put a bow on all this, back on July 14th, 2014, so to the day, 10 years ago, the Royals' playoff chances were 20.1%. As we sit here today, they are 31.8%, according to Fangraphs. So that's good history. I'll take that. But it just puts an exclamation point.
Where's Raul Ibanez?
Point on your point, Jeremy.
Raul Ibanez.
I thought you were going to say Raul Mondesi. I was thinking, I don't even know where that guy is nowadays.
We just need a clubhouse speech of just like, you guys are better than you think you are.
That was your callback. I forgot about that. Yeah.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and move it along. So, Jeremy, this is usually where you would remind me, hey, we have to get to our Spotify Q&As, but unfortunately, Spotify screwed us. So make sure, if you want to make your voice heard, go check out the comment section on this episode. And there were no comments. Well, because when they were doing the transition was like right after we released our last full-length episode, and they were down for a couple of days. So, like I said, they royally screwed us. So can I
throw in a Q&A? I have a question to ask here. Whit Merrifield, Jeremy, you were talking about the we need the speech guy. We need the veteran leadership. Where the heck is that? How about a little Whit the hit, huh? The witness. You want to bring him in?
Right now, I would take him over Garrett Hampson. And I actually kind of argued myself into taking him over Adam Frazier just because he's got more speed than Frazier. But it's not worth messing with, probably. I mean, that's the tier he's in, is the Adam Frazier, Garrett Hampson tier, which is not a tier that I'm like, can we please add that guy to the roster? And I got to be honest, I've said this kind of before, I don't personally like Whit Merrifield. So I'm not excited to get him on the team. I know some people are like, "Oh, I love Whit Merrifield. I miss him." I'm like, I never liked him. I always thought he was kind of a jerk. That's always my impression I got from him. And again, I never met the guy, so I'm completely making that up. But that was always my impression of him. So I'm not sad that he's not here anymore.
Go for all you Royals fans out there who are clamoring to have two-hit Whit back on the team. Number one, we already have our own two-hit Whit. His name is Bobby Witt Jr. And secondly, go try to link up with some Philadelphia Phillies fans and just learn about how Whit Merrifield has been in 2024, and you're gonna change those minds real quick. And yeah, Jeremy, like you said, he's not gonna be in that everyday starter role, He's not going to be Adam Frazier. He's not going to, we're going to be clamoring to have his bat at the third base spot instead of Michael Garcia. Screw that. It's not worth possibly throwing off how this team sits and like their chemistry and whatnot.
Talking about weird things that will show up on like immaculate grids someday in the future. He was an all-star for the Blue Jays last year. Absolutely bonkers.
And here he is.
Remember when he couldn't even get into Canada in 2020?
Yes, 2021. And then they traded him to Toronto that year. And he was like, "Well, I guess I'll get the vaccination."
You're right.
Go play on a contender.
Yeah, he didn't know.
Because there was the whole thing. They had the 10 players who weren't vaccinated, which was the most of anybody. And then, he became kind of the face of that because he was the everyday player who would do it. And then somebody asked him, "Would you get vaccinated to play for if you got traded to a winning team? Because it might be a playoff series in Toronto. You don't want to miss that." And he's like, "Yeah, I would." And everyone immediately turned on him. Everyone was like, "Nope." Yep. I was like, "Welcome to my side, everyone. Welcome." And I guess people have forgotten that he did that because that absolutely happened. He said he would get vaccinated if he was going to play for a good team. And the Royals just weren't good enough for him to put in the effort. So he did. And then as soon as he got traded, he did get vaccinated.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Hey, can I make one last point? I know you're trying to wrap up. Hey, can we talk about Nicky Lopez's, it used to be 6 WAR, but now I think they did some defensive results. His 5.5 win season in 2021.
Bonkers.
And now he's like, he's batting like what, at 7th or 8th for the White Sox these days. Anyway, I feel very vindicated. Nicky Lopez, I'm going to call you out. I never liked you. You blocked me on Twitter, so I'm happy to see your downfall. Even though you're a millionaire, and I'm not, I'm still happy to see your downfall.
Yeah, I would trade lives with Nicky Lopez. I'm not going to lie.
Well,
to be a bad major league player with millions of dollars, that seems like an okay outcome to my life.
No, I think
that's a pretty fair outcome there. But yeah, Nicky Lopez, a .2 FWAR player right now, despite playing 79 games for the Chicago White Sox. Not a good look.
He did have that cool home run. Do you guys remember when they played in Omaha? That year, right? He hit the home run.
He hit the home run at Creighton or whatever, right? Because that was where he went to school.
Yeah.
And then they played the game in Omaha at the Creighton Field, and he hit a home run there. Yeah. And I was like, you can hit a home run here, just nowhere else. And then I think he hit one in Baltimore.
He has had one home run at the major league level since 2021. Okay, that is how poor it is to be Nicky Lopez. All right, let's get to our Royals review. So, Shaun, have we told you what this is?
Yeah,
used to do these.
But is it just when? It's the same thing. Oh, I didn't know I needed a Royals review.
Oh, absolutely. Of course you do.
Of course,
you go first.
So,
give Shaun a chance to think.
Yeah. Okay, fine.
Of course. So I had a prop for this because I wanted to show it. So this is what my review's over today. It's called Tales from the Kansas City Chiefs Sideline. Okay. It is by Bob Gretz, and this is like the updated version. So it has some of the stories from 2018 and 2019. Like that's where it kind of cuts off. But I really, really enjoyed it. A good, simple, straightforward read. And, for a Chiefs fan who, I'm younger, like I don't know a whole lot about the Chiefs pre-2000. And so it filled in a lot of those gaps that I was unaware of regarding the Kansas City Chiefs. Understood a lot more of like, hey, how was the environment around Joe Montana coming to Kansas City? Or, what was the consensus on how the 80s Chiefs were? Stuff like that. But they're shorter stories. They're really easy to read. A lot of great interviews. So please go check that out. I got the hardback version. It's pretty nice. Just toss it in your backpack and go read a couple of stories or two whenever you're waiting around for something. So
who's
Jeremy,
the author?
What'd you say?
Who is the author?
It's Bob Gretz, and it has a foreword by the Stars, Pete Gradoff, I think is how you say his last name. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. So please go check it out. Jeremy, on to you.
Yeah, all right. So I'm going to review this week. All right, so everybody, I think, at this point knows I'm a big anime fan. And one of the frustrating things about anime is how, anime that isn't currently being released can be difficult to access. One of my favorite anime, Food Wars, is you can't stream it anywhere legally. I think you could get the first season,
What?
but like the other seasons,
What's it called?
Food Wars.
What?
Food Wars. It's like
peanut butter
it's like
squid.
it's a cooking
food.
high school cooking show, and they do cook up.
I've seen a clip of this.
Yeah,
I've seen
almost everyone
okay,
has.
okay.
So it's one of my favorite anime, but it's hard to find. And then I bought the Blu-rays, and I'm like, cool, now I have the Blu-rays. Excellent. But I want to watch them on my tablet. And I don't have a Blu-ray player on my tablet. So I went out and I bought a portable Blu-ray player. And I already had a portable hard drive. And here's the thing about Blu-ray drives, is that Blu-rays are encrypted, so your computer cannot read them naturally. You have to plug it into a literal Blu-ray player. So I couldn't just plug the Blu-ray drive into my tablet. So what I did was I've got this Blu-ray drive, and I downloaded this software, Make MKV. And with that software, you can rip an image of a Blu-ray onto your hard drive and then open it, and that'll be unencrypted. And you can open it with like VLC is what I'm using. But Plex also works, probably a bunch of others. And you can open it as a Blu-ray on your with VLC. So I've bought a Blu-rays drive for my computer, and I've been ripping my copies of Food Wars onto my portable hard drive. Each disc is about 50 gigs. I've got a 4 terabyte drive, so it's going to take me a while to fill it up. And then once I fill it up, I'll just buy another one and fill that one up too with more anime. And then I can just plug that into my tablet, open up VLC, open up the disc, quote unquote, the folder that I've backed this up on, and Make MKV has a decryptor, and watch my anime as if I'm watching a Blu-ray. And I'm super excited about it. I watched it to make sure everything was working good, and it does, and I'm so excited. Make MKV has like fixed all my problems with their and the software is free for the first 30 days. I think you have to pay for the license after that, but it is full access to it. So if I rip all of my Blu-rays in the first 30 days, I don't have to pay for it.
Not that this podcast endorses piracy, but are you on the anime piracy subreddit at all?
I didn't actually know there was an anime piracy subreddit.
There's a subreddit. But anyway, so if you do like anime, because they go, I only know this because there's another thing that I use for streaming. I don't watch anime, but there's another thing that I use that somehow this anime piracy subreddit leaks over. But there's 4 anime, there's 9 anime, like there's these websites that like it basically just full on piracy. So again, not that they endorse piracy, this podcast, but Jeremy, your problems can be solved if you can't find.
Yeah, and you know, I have sailed the high seas at times, but I prefer to do things legally whenever possible. There's been some other, obviously, as you said, there's viruses on a lot of those when you're sailing the high seas, as they say. But also, like, I've heard some stuff about how 9 Anime treats people and stuff, and so I'm like, I don't want to support them if I can avoid that. I would rather just, and if my internet's out, I'm screwed there too. So now it's on my hard drive. I can also rip my movies, and boom, it's on my hard drive. I can play it on my computer, play it on my tablet. I can plug it into my TV, and if I can find VLC for my TV, I can just watch them that way, or just open up the files directly. You have to have an app for it, but probably most video playing apps can do it. Yeah, I this is the way I prefer to do it, and to have the review specifically is for Make MKV, for making this so easy to do.
You gotta go to Japan. Have you been to Japan, Jeremy?
I have not.
I'll take you there.
I'm scared to go to Japan because I don't speak the language, and I don't want to be like the dumb American.
I've been twice, and it's totally fine. You need to know a couple words, you're good. You've got to see the stores that are just, it's wall-to-wall anime.
No, it's on my bucket list for sure.
We'll go to Osaka. You let me know. I'll take you to Osaka.
I tour guide offer sounds great. Yeah, we'll figure that out.
I love it. Sean, what do you got for a review, man? Now you've had plenty of time to look up something.
Yeah. I historically would do a movie or TV show, so I'll do a TV show this time because I haven't seen that many good. I mean, I've seen several movies, not that are any particularly good recently. Patriot. I recently discovered the TV show on Amazon, Patriot. Not that I recently discovered it. It's been on my watch list for a very long time. It's gotten a lot of really good recommendations, but I finally got around to watching it because I finished all my other kind of binge watches with kind of recaps. It's a show from 2015 to 2017, I want to say. Its genesis came back from when Amazon, people might not remember this time, but when Amazon Prime first started, Prime Video first, one of their first kind of things was like, basically all these companies would create a pilot, and then fans would vote on which pilot they want to get picked up. So it's kind of like a fan vote for getting your pilot picked up. And so Patriot was one of those shows. I think Marvelous Miss Mabel was one of those shows, but all that to say there are a handful of shows that only existed because fans voted on it. Patriot was one of them. It is about, so for fans who've seen the TV show Barry, it's very much kind of like Barry, where it's kind of very dark comedy, but Patriot is super dark comedy. It is an incredible show. One of the best shows I've ever seen. It's 2 seasons. It's like 45 an hour per episode, maybe 10 episodes per season. So it's a decent watch for a binge. It's about a character who has to infiltrate's the wrong word, but he works for an undisclosed member of the government, and he's got to pretend like he works for this industrial pipeline company. And so basically he's got to go overseas and deliver some money. So it's an incredible show, very dark comedy. It's shot fantastically. The guy who created it, he and the lead actor wrote some of the music for the show. So a lot of the scenes are this kind of folk. In the show, the guy has a folk band. So the soundtrack playing during some of the scenes is the guy singing folk songs, describing what is going on in his head at the time. That's really great. It spurned a podcast where basically, gosh, you guys might not be familiar with this, but maybe there was an old YouTube video from the early 2000s, late 2000s, where it was basically a guy standing in front of a machine, and he was using all this like crazy thermocoupler language. You guys ever seen that video before?
No.
Oh man. All right. So anyways, erase everything I said. So there's a few podcasts that are based off of it. So anyways, Patriot, really, really great show. That'll get my rec. One of the best shows I've ever seen.
All right. I like it. All right, we are running a little bit long, so we're going to go ahead and get on out of here. If y'all want to follow along with Shaun's thoughts on the Royals, on the NFL, or anything in general, his Twitter link is going to be down in the podcast description below, so make sure you go follow Shaun. A lot of good stuff over there. If you want to follow Jeremy and myself for some odd, strange reason, our links are down there too, if you wanted to. What'd you say?
They have been. They've been there for a while now. Why aren't you already following?
Yeah. Well,
why aren't you following, Jacob? Why aren't you following?
I am, Jeremy. Hold on. This is sidebar. We'll talk about this later, Jeremy. Jeez. All right. From everyone here at the team at RoyalsReview.com, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And until next time, go Royals.